I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。So Tao Te Ching chapter 73, it says, the bold in daring will be killed. The bold in not daring will survive. Of these two, one may benefit, the other may harm. The one hated by heaven, who knows the reason? Even the sages still find this difficult. The Tao of Heaven does not contend and yet excels in winning, does not speak and yet excels in responding, is not summoned and yet comes on its own, is unhurried and yet excels in planning. The heavenly net is vast, loose, and yet does not let anything slip through. So, one notation for those who speak Chinese, modern Mandarin, the last two lines have made it into conventional everyday speech, but usually slightly distorted. Usually people will say 天网恢恢，疏而不漏, but it's actually 疏而不失. So the original is a little bit different. Now, 天网, the heavenly net, is something that we're going to spend quite a bit of time discussing later on. First, let's take a look at the structure. So we can do the same thing that we have done before, that we normally do, and that is to look for characters that repeat line after line. And we see quite a few. I'll go ahead and identify them. Save everybody's own work. So the ones that jump out at me immediately, I see that the first two characters in lines 1 and 2 are exactly the same. So I have highlighted them in red. Then looking further down, I see 7, 8, and 9. They all have a bunch of repeating characters, so I've highlighted them. Now, there's more, of course. Let me point out a few. Like in the top two lines, in addition to what we have pointed out, you can also see that the next two characters, third and fourth characters in line 1 repeat themselves again in line 2. So that's one example. And then 7, 8, 9, and even a little bit further down. So 7, 8, 9, we have characters that continue on repeating. So like in line 10, the third character is the same as the previous 3 iterations. And then the fourth character in line 10, this one here, is actually the same as 7 and 8. So I've highlighted some of these items using yellow to showcase them. So you see what I mean. But for our purposes of identifying the structure, just the red ones are sufficient. And how do we see the structure? Well, let's take a look. We can tell with the aid of the highlighted characters that the character is roughly divided into 2 halves. So specifically from line 6 onward, it's all talking about the Tao of Heaven, or the heavenly Tao. So everything from line 6 on is talking about one particular subject, and toward the last 2 lines, there's a term, 天网, the heavenly net, that is used as synonymous with the Tao of Heaven. So from 6 all the way down to 12, we can consider that to be one section, which means that from 1 to 5 will be the other section, section 1, the first section. And that is all about the difference between lines 1 and 2. That is, 勇于敢，勇于不敢. So correspondingly, those are being bold in daring, which can also be translated as reckless, and then bold and not daring, bold but not reckless. So these will produce different results, and from lines 1 and 5, it talks about the difference, about how one of them brings benefit, that is, you will live to see another day. One brings harm, that is, it'll get you killed. So we can see 1 to 5 is the section talking about that, talking about the difference between the two. So we appear to have 2 sections, each one talking about something slightly different, although they are definitely connected, and I'll talk about that connection. All right. So beyond that initial explanation, I think probably the best thing to do with this particular chapter is just to go through line by line and talk about the meaning of each specific line. Let's take a look at the first line. So in Chinese, the first character usually is translated as brave or courage, bravery or courage or courageous. And then, in fact, you can use the first and third character together, 勇敢, as a translation for courage or bravery. Here, though, 勇于敢 has a different meaning. In this ancient context, it means that you are courageous, but you are also charging forward without really looking at what's going on. So, first of all, the first line says, will be killed. Sa is to kill or be killed. And so basically what it's saying is that if you are courageous, but you charge forward without thinking, you're reckless, you're daring, that seems like a very positive thing, but it's actually to be thoughtless, to be mindless, to go forth without thinking is actually something that's very bad from a Tao perspective, because it means you will probably come to harm or be killed. So the Tao guarantees a negative result from being bold but thoughtless. Now, later on, when we go to line number 2, we'll see the very opposite. That is, the Tao guarantees a positive result from being bold, that you take the initiative, but thoughtful instead of thoughtless. But let's stay with this for the time being. So out on the battlefield, the meaning for this is immediately clear. That is, if you are a courageous fighter, but you don't really watch where you are going and you charge into battle, you may be going into a trap. And I use the term kill zone. Even in ancient times, it was something that was well understood, that you can have archers waiting, and they are not. They will be shooting at an angle, so it's a semicircular. It's an arc of archers that concentrate and focus their firepower in one particular spot. If that is the spot that you are charging into, then you are charging into a world of hurt. So to be reckless, to charge, damn the torpedoes, basically, full speed ahead, that's not a smart thing to do. That's a bad thing to do. So that's the battlefield. What about in life? So it's very simple. In life, it's a good idea to have initiative. It's a good idea to take action. But if you take action without thinking it through, without realizing all the ramifications of the action, then you will come to harm. You will get the negative results. That's guaranteed by the Tao. So that's line 1. Let's move on to line 2. Line 2 is the opposite. Instead of being thoughtless, line 2 is being thoughtful. So This is what I mentioned before. The Tao guarantees a positive result when you think about what you're doing. So on the battlefield, this means observing the enemy deployment and attack a vulnerability. You know, you don't want to attack where the enemy is strongest, where enemy is all set up to kill the invaders. You want to attack where they are not paying a whole lot of attention in order for your attack to have the maximum effectiveness. So that's the battlefield. What about in life? This means simply taking action with a plan. So a plan, if you want to think about the idea for just a moment, well, what is making a plan? So you can plan too little and too much. Both are extremes. Planning too little will be like, yeah, I got your plan right here. The plan is to attack. Let's go right now. That's not really planning. And too much planning is when you spend a whole lot of time, more time than you really have, to plan out every single little detail. And when you're actually in battle, you realize that everything is not exactly as you understood it prior to making those plans, or that things have changed in the fast shifting, constantly changing battlefield. So too much planning can be a bad thing as well. But in general, there's a minimum of planning that you must do. There's some, you have to at least observe the current situation and understand, have a basic understanding of the current situation before you take action. Then that will allow the possibility that your plan can be modified as you continue the action. So anyhow, in the first two lines, we have the difference between life and death. And it's the difference between the ability to think and not think. So one of them will be a benefit, the other one will be a harm. So obviously, to be thoughtful will mean great results, great rewards. To be thoughtless means punishment by death. So throughout history, in every aspect of life, initiative plus planning will be consistently rewarded. So this is also the reason why we naturally gravitate to people with a plan. The expression in the West is that, when you are the man with the plan, you become the natural leader, because a lot of people haven't put any thought toward what the plan ought to be. So they gravitate to the person who does have a plan, who has thought it out, who has planned for some contingencies in case things don't work out. So you always want to be the person with the plan. So as a matter of fact, when I talk about history, I'm talking about the history of humanity, the history of our species from roughly 5 million years ago up until today. So in all of that time, as human beings evolved through the eons, the reckless are weeded out, removed from the gene pool. So we have evolved, we're at the very end, we're the last chain, the last link in this very long chain of evolution, where we have conditioned our species to appreciate people who have the thinking ability, who have the ability to look ahead and anticipate. And we have a visceral dislike for people who don't do that, people who are not thinking or thinking in ridiculous ways that get them killed. We have a term for that, and the term is stupidity. Moving on. So the next line talks about how this is hated by heaven, but I'm going to start with the human perspective. So we placed a premium on intelligence, on the ability to think, and I want to note that I'm talking about the evolutionary context. So when I say intelligence, it's not necessarily the intelligence that'll get you an advanced degree, like you're the PhD or something. The kind of intelligence I'm talking about is the intelligence that's practical. In ancient times, in primitive times, it would be the intelligence that helps you survive. In today's world, it's not necessarily the book smart kind of intelligence that you know a lot of facts and you can memorize many things, but it's the intelligence that lets you know what to do to get the best results at any one time, whether it's being streetwise or it's having business acumen, it's having managerial ability, it's practical kinds of intelligence. So we like people who are smart. We look for people who are smart in seeking mates, in thinking about the next generation, procreation. We want to end up with someone who is not the reckless variety, someone who has the ability to demonstrate anticipation, critical thought, assessment, judgment, maturity, all that. So the flip side of it is that we want to avoid stupidity as much as we possibly can. Now, it's not always possible for us to avoid stupidity. Despite millions of years of evolution, I think you would agree that we still have a mixed bag. Humanity is a mixed bag. We have the very brilliant and also the very unbrilliant. And the reason why we avoid that, we have a distaste, we have a revulsion against the stupid, is that they don't just hurt themselves. Sometimes they'll take you down with them. Sometimes they will harm innocent bystanders as well. So in terms of the Chinese characters here, so let me just point out the first character, Tian, that's the sky or heaven. The fourth character there, and this is divided into two groups of 4 characters each. The last character there, is to really hate something, is to dislike something so powerfully that it's the best word for that is really hate. And also the last character here is cause or reason. How can we know its cause? How can we know its reason? So here, the whole idea is that it's not just human beings that abhor stupidity, that hate stupidity. It also seems to be hated by heaven too. What does that mean? Well, let me talk about the Darwin Awards. This is entertaining. This is an actual award that started a little more than 20 years ago, and it's been awarded every single year. The idea is that the people are nominated for the Darwin Awards. And how do you get nominated? You have to do something that's incredibly stupid to remove yourself from the gene pool. That is, you end up killing yourself as a result of some stupidity. So in the very beginning, more than 20 years ago, the submissions to the Darwin Awards were mostly jokes, like urban legends, things that could not be verified. But they insisted on a standard of accuracy, so the Darwin Awards actually improved and became something that was actually substantiated, like news reports, police reports, the crime scene. So I'll take you back to the beginning of the Darwin Awards. James Burns from Michigan died while attempting to repair his truck from underneath while it was in motion. Let me explain what that is. Mr. Burns from Michigan, while driving his truck, heard a funny noise that the truck was making. So it bugged him, and it could lead to something even worse. So he wanted to repair that problem ASAP. But as soon as he stopped the truck, the noise went away, because the noise only was there when the car when the truck was moving, was in motion. So he got one of his friends. He said, yeah, I need a favor. I have to fix my truck, and I have to figure out where the noise is coming from. When I'm sitting in the truck and driving it, I hear the noise, but I can't tell where it really is. So I want you to do me the favor of driving the truck. I'm going to hang from underneath the truck, and I'm going to move around to hear where the noise is coming from so I can isolate it. So that's what he did. He was sort of like Indiana Jones at the bottom of the truck while the truck was in motion. So the noise doesn't come on until the truck is moving at a relatively fast rate. So it speeded up until it probably hit something. So Mr. Burns did not survive. So this was such an example of stupidity that gets oneself killed, so reckless, so thoughtless, that it won the Darwin Awards for that year. And the next year, it was Krzysztof Asninski from Poland, died while engaging in a drunken contest of masculinity, like how macho are you type of contest. So Krzysztof was extremely drunk, and his friends, male friends, I would add, were also extremely drunk. They got into a discussion about who is more macho. So all the men claimed to be the most macho of all. So they decided to settle the argument. It turned into an argument. No, I'm more macho. No, I'm more macho. So they started to beat one another with the bag of frozen vegetable, and that did not really resolve anything because they just kept on doing it. Nobody was really hurt. So one of the drunken friends of Krzysztof says, I will show you how macho I am. Take a look at this. He brings out a chainsaw, turns it on, he starts it up, it's going, the chainsaw. He says, look at me. And then he uses the chainsaw, extremely drunk, lots of alcohol in his body, feeling no pain. He uses the chainsaw on one of his legs, and he saws it off. He saws it right off. Krzysztof says, that's nothing. Give me that chainsaw. And he uses it on his neck. That's how he died. That's how he won the Darwin Awards. So another prime example of action without thinking through the consequences. He's probably, in his drunken state, he's probably thinking, what if I were to, chop off my head? That's way more important than a leg. So that'll prove that I'm more macho. Okay, so I think it goes without saying that even without that contest, ladies would not consider Krzysztof to be like a prime specimen, for as a match. In the next year, 1997, 2 men from Holland died while sticking their heads out the window of a bus. It's a company trip. They were with their coworkers in a bus. I don't know if they were inebriated, but they definitely decided they were in a good mood. The bus is moving at a pretty good clip, and they stuck out their necks to sing, and to sing in the wind. But then the bus entered a narrow tunnel, so the 2 men were decapitated. So not a very good way to go. But that's definitely acting without thinking. Now, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to this, and sad to say, these are all real-life stories. There's a man in Korea who is on a motorized wheelchair, so it's got some power to it. So he's trying to get to an elevator in a tall building. He's trying to get to the elevator, and he gets there just as the door closes on the elevator. So this got him really mad. So this is all captured on video, by the way. So he backs up his motorized wheelchair, and then he goes forward to ram the door of the elevator, thinking that he'll ram it open. Now, those that know the construction of elevators understand that ramming the elevator door doesn't cause it to open like that, but the elevator door itself, it's not that sturdy because it's not expected that people will try to force it open. So it'll actually collapse, open up like that. It'll actually open up by its hinge on top. So as it opens up, well, the elevator has already gone up, so it's an empty elevator shaft. So as he rammed it the second time, he went right through the elevator door down the shaft and died. So, okay, well, not a real smart way to go, So he won the Darwin Award for that year. Many other examples, as I mentioned, this is from 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. So there's more than 20 examples of exactly what this chapter is talking about. Action without thoughts, without thinking. So stupidity is so utterly predictable. It is as if heaven itself and all the deities in heaven dislike stupidity as much as you do, as much as I do, as much as we all do. But wait a minute. Don't we always talk about how the Tao has no emotions? We also talk about how the Tao has no preferences, it favors no one. So question to the sage, why is it that it seems as if heaven favors the people who are not stupid? That is, it doesn't, they get all the rewards in life, and the people that are stupid, they get all the punishment. But I thought the Tao doesn't have human emotions or preferences. Isn't that the case? So why is it that the thoughtful are favored over the thoughtless? And why does it arrange the most gruesome deaths for the most idiotic, like the examples that I have cited in the Darwin Awards? So even the sages have a tough time explaining this. Now, I want to point to this to highlight the fact that this is actually an attempt at humor from the part of Lao Tzu. He's basic. Now, of course, he'll be able to tell you, if you were to ask him the serious question, he would be able to say that, well, you see, they're stupid, they do stupid things, they hurt themselves, so naturally that's what's going to happen. But here, he's trying to use humor to make the point that, wow, it's so extreme, it's so amazing that even sages cannot really explain it. How do people get that stupid? Well, who knows? Even the sages have trouble explaining that. And why is it that the stupid are so universally hated, not just by people, but also by all the unseen forces out in nature? Well, that's just the way it is. Even the sages cannot explain it in a satisfactory way. Okay, let's keep it moving. Okay, so we have now gone through the first 5 lines, and I now want to do a quick recap of the first 5 lines just to make sure everyone is clear. So the repeating character of lines 1 and 2, you now know is brave or courageous, or my translation, bold. And the third character and the fourth character, they're the same in lines 1 and 2. It's 敢. 勇敢 means courageous, but 敢 by itself can best be translated to dare or daring. So in Mandarin, if you say 敢不敢, it means do you dare? Like, I dare you to try, right? So that's the closest that I can find in the English language to convey the original. And then last character means kill, last character means live. So quite a bit of difference between the two. The Tao guarantees negative results from being bold but thoughtless. The other side of the coin is that boldness plus thoughtful planning will be amply rewarded. So I want to point out that bold, to take initiative, to be motivated is still extremely important. It's just that you have to do it with a lot of thoughts. That's what's actually rewarded. If as a result of line 1, you feel like, well, then what's the point? I'm just not going to do anything then. Well, you also will not reap the positive side of the Tao, the rewards. So then the last part of line 4 points to how, we don't really know the inner workings of karma. We don't know when a bad result will occur to someone who's being truly stupid. But we do know that it always works. So that's my quick summary for the first 5 lines of this chapter. Now let's move on. We are now able to tackle the second half. We're making pretty good progress today. So line 6 is relatively easy. We can just talk about it. 天之道. So the first character, 天, that's sky or heaven. 之is the apostrophe S. And then Tao, that's just the Tao, like this character here. So you can translate it directly. The closest translation would be heaven's Tao. Heaven's Tao. So I just make it the Tao of Heaven. Seems to sound a little bit better, but it's the same thing. The Tao of Heaven is equal to heaven's Tao. So what about heaven's Tao? Now the Tao of Heaven, I want to emphasize, the Tao of Heaven is exactly the same as the Tao of Earth. To say that it's the Tao of Heaven is to point that it's the universal Tao, the cosmic Tao, the Tao that applies to absolutely everything and everywhere. So the Tao of Heaven, what about it? Well, the first line says, does not contend and yet excels in winning. So the first character that you see in 7, 8, and 9, that's the character bu. It means no or not. So the second character in line 7, zhen, that means contend or to fight, to clash with someone, conflict. So note that the conventional concept that we usually have, if we don't know anything about the Tao, is that you have to fight in order to win. And when you fight to win. So in the Tao, Lao Tzu wants to introduce a different concept. Lao Tzu notices that the Tao itself does not fight anyone, but always wins in the end. This opens up the possibility that you too can be victorious without having to fight anyone or anything. And in fact, the Tao is about winning victories without having the strife and struggle of battling anybody. So that means when we want to live our lives in the Tao, we want to cultivate the Tao, we have to emulate the Tao, emulate the sages, emulate the Tao. It means we have to let go of the need to fight, which, by the way, includes the need to argue, even the need to debate. Oftentimes, whether it's to fight, to argue, or debate, the need is ego-driven. The need is to prove how macho you may be, or how powerful you may be, how dominant, how above other people, better than other people you are. All of that is ego-driven. If you didn't have that ego wanting you to prove yourself in some way, you would be much more at peace. Okay, so let's move down one line. We have a line that says, does not speak and yet excels in responding. So you already know the first character means no or not. The second character means to speak. And then and then we have good at responding or skillful at responding. So this is a way to describe the Tao. The Tao is silent. It never says anything, but it constantly reacts to your every move. No matter what it is you do, there's some kind of reaction. There's some kind of effect to the cause that you have initiated. So if what you do is a positive thing, a good deed, humanitarian, charitable, kind deed, then the effect is also going to be positive. But if it's negative, if it's brutal, if it's mean, malicious, then the effect is also going to be negative. So it constantly reacts to your every move. So what this is also saying is that oftentimes we think that we're having a conversation with a deity when we pray. Like, oh God, please, could you please just give me what I want, what I need? I really need it. I really want it. In return, I promise to be good. You're having this imagined conversation with an entity who doesn't really respond to you. And sometimes people will go pretty deep into it and imagine a response. And that response might be, my son, all shall be yours. You need to only ask. Something like that. You know, I like that response. Oh, thank you, God. So Lao Tzu says, rather than to stick to that whole paradigm, it will be better to, you know, to live right. Rather than to, don't pray to the Tao and imagine some kind of answer. You can pray to express gratitude if you like, but pray asking for something that's probably not going to get you what you want. But if you were to take action thoughtfully and live right in the Tao, mindful actions is the way that I describe it, then the Tao guarantees a positive impact, a positive results that you will obtain for yourself. So this, I would suggest, is much more effective than to pray. And I probably have just offended a whole bunch of people. People, when they see this on YouTube and get to this part, you know, some of them will be like, oh, I am closing this browser window. I don't need to hear any more of this crap. What? No praying? Okay. But hey, listen, I got to tell you, that's the original message. I'm only telling you what it says is that the Tao does not speak. It responds to you in terms of cause and effect. It doesn't respond to you by saying, by talking to you. That's just reality. Sorry. So moving on. It's very common for everyone everywhere to pray for protection. You know, you see it, you've done it, I've done it. Everybody does it all the time. So the position from Lao Tzu is that praying is too much talking and too little action. Like when you pray for the victims of terrorism, the sad reality is that you actually haven't done them any good. You probably have made yourself feel a little bit better, but it doesn't make any change that's proactive on your part. If instead of praying, you take some sort of action, activism, if you engage in activism, that's actually more than you will accomplish by praying for the victims. And sorry to lay it out so bluntly like that, but I'm talking reality. Praying, sorry, doesn't really do anything. And I know people will say, Derek, are you aware of the studies that demonstrate the effect of prayers? Like, for instance, this study from 2011 that shows that when a group prays for people who are sick, that they actually get better. When it comes to studies and experiments, the important thing in science is that it has to be something that can be replicated. And it also has to be double-blind. That is, the people who are the experimental subjects should not be aware of what you are trying to prove, because in trying to please you, they will try to provide you with the result that you were looking for. Now, When a study is peer reviewed, when it's when experiment is conducted in a double-blind fashion, when it's designed correctly, there's no evidence that any of the positive results can be replicated by anyone. So I've looked into it pretty deeply, as you can probably guess. So I'm gonna have to say, no, you can pray to make yourself feel better. You can pray to focus your own thoughts, energies about bettering your life. That's gonna be effective. So prayers have a role, prayers have usefulness, but don't imagine for a moment that when you pray for the victims of the acts of terrorism in London, that magically somehow things will get better for them. It won't. That's just the unfortunate reality. So what Lao Tzu is also saying is that if you live in accordance with the Tao, you will naturally be protected. When you live right, when you live properly in accordance with the Tao, taking the precautions that you need to take, you will naturally be protected. So the Tao will and does respond to your every wish, but you have to take thoughtful action to give a response to manifest in your reality. So this is sort of the advanced level law of attraction. You know, in the books on the law of attraction, the idea, the impression that many of the teachers on the law of attraction, the impression they want to convey is that you just have to think about it all the time and it will manifest. The advanced level that I'm presenting to you here is that thinking about it alone won't do it. The universe has an excellent way of mirroring everything that you do. So if all you do is think about a good thing happening to you, that's what the universe will do. Think about it. If instead you take some sort of action toward that thing becoming real in your life, the universe will reciprocate by taking action on your behalf as well. Enough actions have taken place, that thing shows up in your life. So that's the true law of attraction. Everything mirrors everything else. The universe mirrors your decisions and your actions. So if you do take thoughtful action, the law of attraction works. It works like gangbusters for you. But if all you do is think about it, sitting on your couch, it's not gonna work. Because in mirroring you, the universe is also sitting on the couch. Okay, line 9. See, we're getting toward the end, actually. So line 9 is not summoned and yet comes on its own. So if you think about line 8, does not speak and yet excels in responding. Here is not summoned and yet comes on its own. It makes sense because you don't need to pray for a deity to show up in your life to save you. The Tao is already there. The Tao is already present in your life, like it or not. We also, this concept shows up in other areas of life as well. It certainly shows up in religion. So remember, God is ever present. God is omnipresent. God is everywhere. So in other words, you don't need to actually pray to God to say, God, please come to me, because God is already with you. You don't need to summon God, so to speak, because God is already there, like it or not. So on a personal level, when you emulate the Tao, it means you anticipate being needed by others, that you remain observant, you figure out what they need at any particular time, you take care of that need even before it occurs to them, even before they ask. Okay, line 10. Unhurried and yet excels in planning. Okay. So by the way, the last character in line 10, that's the character for planning, to scheme, to design. And this line confirms our understanding that we have discussed about this chapter. So we've talked about not rushing into anything. So the first two characters in line 10 is about this state of being calm, proceeding at a certain speed, but not in a frantic way. So not in a rush, not hurried. So compare that to the very first line of this chapter that says, those who are bold but daring, that is rushing ahead. Well, that's actually not the characteristic of the Tao. That's opposed to the Tao. So the Tao is about not rushing into anything, but playing things out beforehand. So right away, that's a better strategy for living life. So for you, when you want to practice this, to emulate this, you're also moving at a natural pace, and that natural pace is not too fast and not too slow. It's a moderate pace, and you are always looking ahead and to plan out your next move. And also, you are validating your current plan, the plan that takes you to where you are at the present time, and you are comparing the results that you have right now with the results that you were expecting when you had that plan, and you are making adjustments. Things tend to clarify when you follow a plan, and you figure out the correct way to adjust the plan for best effect. That's how everything works. Okay, so once again, here we are at the summary screen. I want to summarize lines 6 to 10 for everyone. So remember the Tao, there's no fighting against the karmic effect of the Tao. So if the Tao can be seen as the heavenly net, everything has an effect. If you are reckless, you will be killed. If you are careful and thoughtful, you will be rewarded. There's no fighting against the karmic effect. And because karma is a cosmic law of balance, it is not someone, it's not a deity that can talk to you. It's a law. It's like a natural law of physics. It's always there. You don't have to request its presence. And it takes its time, and it may not happen right away. So karma may not be immediate. Sometimes karma is instant. So there's a song called Instant Karma. I hope you have heard. John Lennon, famous song. So sometimes karma is instantaneous. Other times, karma takes its time. It's not predictable. So we are now at the last two lines of 73 in our analysis, line by line. So 天网恢恢. So 天, heaven, sky, heavenly, 网, net, 恢恢, vast. It's repeated twice because it's big. So the metaphor this metaphor is useful in ancient times because ancient people definitely know a lot about catching fish with a net. So visualize fish caught in a net, and this would be like abundant fish, a lot of fish. Extend the metaphor to imagine all of existence contained in this invisible formless net. So we're all fish caught up in it. Only difference is the nets that you use to catch fish, it's pretty tight. It's full of fish. The heavenly net is loose. You don't even feel that it's there. So notice that just like a net that we use to catch fish, the heavenly net is not something that will fight against what it catches. The net is just there. You can struggle against it all you want. You won't change a thing. You can't free yourself of it. There's no fighting or contention on the part of the net. The net, the heavenly net, is silent, but it responds naturally to every move you make, like the net that we use to catch fish. If you struggle against it, it will expand or shrink accordingly, but it won't let you go. As long as you exist, it's going to be there. And for those of you who have asked questions, I'll circle back and check on those questions in just a moment. We have 5 more minutes left, so I want to see if we can get to the summary. So still quite a bit more to go. Especially, I wanted to talk about instant karma. Karma is a fascinating topic, and there are times when karma, the karmic effect, can take us by surprise. And it happens in big things, little things. Let me see if I can explain using a bunch of pictures. And this is probably the last thing that we'll talk about before we close the meeting for today. So karma, let's talk about that aspect of the heavenly net. So karma can be trivial or harmless. Here's an example. We see 2 ladies having a good time at dinner. So the lady on the right, in a playful way, is putting up 2 fingers on the head of the lady to the left, not realizing the shadow cast by the light is showing her fingers on top of her head. So instant karma. Now, so it can be as trivial and as harmless as that, or it can be something a little bit bigger. So I want to introduce you to this gentleman. This gentleman, his name is Matt Buckland. He is an HR executive at a London investment firm. He takes the subway to work every day. One morning, this HR executive goes to work on the subway, and there's a rude fellow passenger on the subway, and someone who pushes past him, elbows him out of the way, and then says, F off, except didn't actually say F, glared at him before going on his way. So this was not a great beginning for Matt's day that day, but when he got to work, he tried to put it out of his mind and resume his daily schedule. As an HR executive, he had a whole bunch of interviews to conduct that day for open positions within his firm, this investment company. And the first interviewee was the gentleman on the subway who pushed him and said, F you. Instant karma. So later on, Matt said, well, it was a very awkward and uncomfortable interview, and he didn't get the job. Oh, really? I could not have guessed that. So it could be the loss of an opportunity. That could be instant karma right there. It could also be pain and suffering. So here I have this example. So what do we have? We have a younger gentleman to the left. His name is Gregory McCallum. And then we have an older gentleman to the right. His name is Frank Corsi. So Gregory went into Frank's home intending to rob him. So first breaking and entering, and then basically armed robbery because he had a knife. What he did not realize was that Frank is a retired boxer, someone who's very comfortable with the art of fighting. So when the hapless Gregory was eventually arrested by police, following all the police report, you can see he ended up with a black guy and big fat lips, courtesy of Frank, the retired boxer. Instant karma right there. So it could be pain and suffering. And there's also closer, and this one is in Florida. There's a very aggressive driver. This is all captured on cell phone camera. So he was caught behind a driver that was slower, but was actually just obeying the speed limit. So I don't know, gentlemen, I don't know if you guys remember when you were younger, full of testosterone, you were impatient. Everywhere you go, you were in a rush. So that's what's going on with this young man. He was steamed behind this slower female driver. So he sped past the female driver. He honked, he flipped the bird to the slower female driver while the female driver continues to record this very aggressive behavior. Moments later, he hit a tree. And to add to his woes, police showed up, gave him a ticket for speeding. So instant karma right there. Now, it doesn't have to be all negative. I have an example here for positive karma. The heavenly net does not judge negative or positive. It just gives you back what you have dished out. So here's an example. After leaving a job interview, speaking of job interviews, saw someone drop some items, so I helped him. The interviewer saw me and offered me the job above the position I just applied for. Ooh, instant karma. Yes. So this leads us to the conclusion for today. Reminder, motivation alone is not enough. You need at least the minimal plan. You need to at least the plan to test things out before committing yourself. Then with that plan, you can modify as you go. And don't be in a rush. Give the process time to clarify. So I'll talk about this again next time. And then the other big concept we talked about today, the heavenly nets, positive or negative energies that you dish out will be returned. It's a universal law. And one caveat, one warning for everyone is that you may not be aware of your positive impact or how negative you are. So my suggestion is that you get a second opinion. So oftentimes I see people posting arguments, rebuttals online, like in social media. They have no idea how negative they are being. They sometimes they'll put in what they think are skillful is a skillful response. Like for instance, they will praise the other party before coming in with their strongest rebuttal points. Everybody sees right through it, so it's actually not a great idea. Better to just refrain from debates in general. So those are the 2 points that will be repeated again next time about mindful actions, the heavenly nets, cause and effect, karma. Beware of karma, especially instant karma. And that is 起立，面向佛堂，持架3鞠躬，1鞠躬，再鞠躬，3鞠躬，持架规则是1鞠躬，接班1鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.